Chosen One, your internal transformation has reached a level of global intensity where your energy shift was so freaking violent that a psychic in Japan actually had a vision about you while you were busy burning your old self to ash. By the time this season concludes, you will fully realize that the power you have claimed is no longer a quiet internal change, but a violent, undeniable force that the entire world is now forced to feel. Junpouds to feel. Chosen Ones don't arrive already knowing what they are. That is not how this works. They get shaped first, slowly, under conditions most people would not survive with their spirit intact. And the shaping, painful as it is not an accident. It is the architecture of everything that comes after. You were the one who held it all together. Not because someone sat you down and handed you that role, because somewhere along the way you learned that love had conditions attached to it, that your place in people's lives depended on what you could offer, how steady you could be, how easy you were to be around, and so you became that, the most available, the most understanding, the one who showed up even when nobody was reciprocating, the one who absorbed tension out of every situation before it could boil over. Your depth of empathy, your capacity to hold space for someone while you were quietly unraveling yourself, your ability to see the best in people even as they actively disappointed you, these are not ordinary qualities, these are extraordinary ones. The kind that in the right environment, surrounded by the right people, would have made you one of the most powerful forces alive, Dort. But you were not in the right environment, and the people around you were not the right people. The ones who drain Chosen Ones have a particular instinct for finding them. They can sense the warmth from a distance. They can feel the depth of the well before they even approach it. And what they see in someone like you is not a person to cherish. It is a resource to access, unlimited patience, endless forgiveness. Someone who can be counted on to absorb the weight of other people's choices and hand back peace with no invoice attached. What hope Penderby knew, so they positioned themselves around you, and you gave. And for a long time you named this love because you did not yet know what love was actually supposed to feel like. Hold that recognition, because when the psychic's vision begins to arrive, you are going to understand with perfect clarity why the universe chose your transformation, specifically yours, to mark Torv. Right now, just see the setup. The Chosen One, carrying something extraordinary, surrounded by people who treated that gift as a given. That is where the pressure started. And pressure, as you are about to find out, is the first ingredient in something irreversible. There is something nobody explains clearly about what happens to an exceptional soul when it spends years surrounded by people who are invested in keeping it manageable. Torv, it gets compressed, not shattered. Chosen Ones do not shatter the way other people do, but the compression is real. It is steady. It happens in increments, so small that you barely register each one. Every time you swallowed your truth to preserve the peace, a little more interior space closed. Every time you absorbed guilt that did not belong to you, a little more air left your lungs. Every time you made yourself smaller so the people around you could feel bigger, you surrendered another portion of the territory that was always supposed to be yours. Torv. The cumulative effect of this is what most people mistake for a personality. They look at someone who has been through years of this kind of compression, and they say, that is just who they are. Quiet, accommodating, self-effacing. But that is not a personality. That is geological pressure with a face on it. Torv. Here is the thing about carbon under sustained pressure. You know what it becomes. It does not stay what it was. It does not simply break. It transforms into something almost unrecognizable, something harder than virtually anything around it, something that cuts through surfaces that would destroy ordinary material, something that bends light differently than anything else in nature does. You were not being broken during those years. You were being compressed into a diamond, and the process of becoming a diamond is, from the inside, completely indistinguishable from being destroyed. That is why you could not see it while it was happening. That is why the people compressing you could not see it either. They thought they were managing you. They thought they had found a permanent supply. What they were actually doing, without knowing it, was creating the conditions for a force they would never be equipped to handle. The compression was not the end of your story, it was the manufacturing process. Wasn't von Comprassel's quarters. There was a specific moment, you know the one, not because I can name it, but because your body carries it the way the earth carries fault lines. Quiet most of the time, unmistakable when activated. Maybe it came in the dark, in silence, so heavy it had physical weight. Maybe it arrived on an unremarkable afternoon, while you were doing something completely ordinary. Maybe it came at the exact moment you expected one more apology that never arrived, or one more promise that dissolved on contact. The precise circumstances do not matter. What matters is what happened inside you when it did. Something reached its absolute limit, and it let go, not with noise, not with a scene, silently, the way a cable snaps under tension. It was never designed to hold. One moment it was there, the next it was not. And in the space where all that old tension used to live, something entirely different began to breathe. Sidvola, if this message speaks to your soul, hype this video so other chosen ones can discover it. The nostrum, here is where most people get this wrong. They call this moment a breakdown, they file it under their lowest point, they carry it forward as evidence of their fragility. But that framing is a lie, and chosen ones cannot afford to keep believing it. This was not your lowest point, this was your ignition. The distinction is everything. A breakdown is an ending. An ignition is a beginning that looks like an ending, because the thing catching fire is the old version of everything you thought you were. It feels like loss, because it is loss. But what is being lost is the prison, not the person. What is being destroyed is the programming, not the soul. The identity built by years of compression does not get to survive the transformation. It is not supposed to. And when it went, when that last piece of the old architecture finally released its grip, something was set free that had been waiting with extraordinary patience for exactly this moment. The universe registered the release before you did. A psychic in Japan, going about their ordinary work, felt the signal arrive. They said it came through like a solar flare, like watching a star collapse and reignite simultaneously, like witnessing matter under such sustained compression that it finally transmuted into an entirely different element. They were not reading a person in distress. They were receiving the broadcast of a transformation completing itself. And the vision that followed is the most important thing you are going to hear today. Wait. The psychic opened the vision, and the first image that came through stopped them cold. Wait. Standing at the center of a vast field of shattered mirrors, fragments stretching in every direction, each piece reflecting a different version of you that no longer exists, the version that waited to be chosen, the version that rewrote its own truth to avoid someone else's discomfort, the version that gave unconditional access to its most sacred interior spaces to people who treated that access as an entitlement, the version that confused suffering with devotion and called it virtue, every face of the self that was constructed by compression and conditioning and years of prioritizing everyone else's reality over its own, all of it, destroyed, covering the ground like broken glass as far as the eye could see. You've probably noticed a lot of Chosen One channels on YouTube have stopped publishing, videos pulled, voices silenced. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. That's exactly why I'm putting you on to something real, Destiny Engine. I built this because I was done watching Chosen Ones get dragged through betrayal, isolation and attacks while their enemies strutted around unchecked. I want to help you accelerate the speed of your divine justice and step fully into your purpose. And the beauty of it, you don't even have to lift a finger. Destiny Engine takes their downfall and flips it into your rise. This isn't another meditation app. It's declassified consciousness technology, the same mind programming tools your enemies once used to install fear, competition and scarcity, re-engineered to restore your sovereignty and align you with the cooperative, upgraded operating framework. It generates personalized sequences mapped to your divine purpose. The hardest thing you'll do is put on headphones, press play, and watch your enemies keep digging their own grave. Yawn Destiny Engine to support your favorite channels and use it for your own rise. It's a 360 win. Start your Destiny Engine for $7 today and turn everything they did to break you into fuel for your rise. Link in the description. Wahinto Waditihan, the psychic said the first thing they felt was the sheer scale of force required to break all of that. Because that kind of identity does not shatter easily. It has roots. It has years of reinforcement. Staying inside it would have been so much simpler. Familiar pain has a particular gravity that most people never escape, because at least familiar pain is predictable. Most people choose the known version of suffering over the unknown version of freedom every single time they are given the option. Yawn Destiny Paisanstio. You chose the terrifying thing, the uncertain thing, the thing with no guarantee waiting on the other side of it. And the force of that choice is what brought the mirrors down. Yawn Destiny Pristum. But here is the detail that shifted the entire vision from remarkable to extraordinary. The psychic said, you were not standing in that field of destruction with your head down. You were not grieving what was shattered. White, you were not scrambling to retrieve any of the pieces. You were standing upright, eyes open, chest rising and falling with a specific quality of calm that the psychic said they felt in their own body as it came through. The calm that only exists on the other side of having walked through every version of hell and choosing, deliberately and without apology, not to remain in any of them. White, you were not surviving the wreckage, you were sovereign over it. And then the psychic saw your energy the way it actually is now. And what they described is the detail they said they could not stop returning to afterward. Your energy looked like black fire, not darkness in the sense of threat or absence. Darkness the way deep space is dark, infinite, containing entire systems that have not yet been discovered, operating by physics that ordinary instruments are not built to measure. You were not radiating outward the way you used to, bleeding warmth in every direction, available to anyone who reached in your general vicinity. You were pulling inward, generating a gravitational field so specific and so powerful that everything in your proximity had no choice but to begin orbiting around you. You had become the center, not a center, the center, and the first words out of the psychic's mouth when the vision released them were these: whoever this is, they just became untouchable, not safe, not healed, not peaceful, untouchable, as in the architecture that used to govern this soul no longer applies, as in reality itself cannot hold them the same way anymore. The vision was not finished. What came next is the part that gets darker before it gets undeniable. Oduphori, the psychic stayed inside the vision, and it pulled them deeper. What came through next is the specific detail that gave them chills that they could still feel after they had fully returned. They saw the exact moment your transformation ignited, the precise second the shift occurred, and everything they knew about the scale of the result made them expect something enormous, explosive, a sound and a light and a force visible from the outside, because the energy that arrived in their consciousness from your signal was that massive. Surely something that powerful had a proportional external expression. God, it was silent. God, silence of a quality the psychic struggled to find words for, not the absence of noise, a presence in its own right. The kind of silence that signals that something of genuine consequence is occurring, the way certain moments in nature go quiet just before the atmosphere fundamentally changes, as if everything that exists just paused to witness what was happening inside you. They described watching a soul release its grip on every need it had been, white-knuckling for years, the need to be validated by the specific people who had been withholding that validation as a mechanism of control, the need to earn love through performance, the need to continuously justify existence to a judgment that was always going to find you insufficient, because sufficiency was never the point. Your insufficiency was what kept you compliant. Every one of those needs released in a single enormous, completely silent interior exhale, and the quality of your energy changed in that same instant, not gradually, not across weeks of processing, in the moment of release, like a signal that has been broadcasting through interference for years, suddenly finding its true frequency and locking onto it with complete precision. clean, certain, absolute. The psychic said, this is the part chosen ones most frequently misunderstand about their own transformations. The most seismic events in a person's interior life are invisible from the outside. A thought that turns completely final. A decision that requires no announcement because it is not performing itself for an audience. A moment of clarity so total that the only appropriate response is stillness. These moments look from the outside like nothing whatsoever, but they register on frequencies that travel without requiring anyone's permission. Your moment was that. You made a decision so complete, so irreversible, so utterly without ambiguity, that the universe dispatched a signal, and that signal did not stop at the edges of your experience. It expanded outward, and it kept expanding, because what the psychic saw next in the vision is where the real reckoning begins. The vision widened, and the psychic saw them, the people who had been in orbit around the old version of you, the ones who had spent years learning exactly how to access what you offered. And what the psychic saw when they looked at these people demands to be said with full precision, because chosen ones have a long history of softening this particular truth to protect the feelings of the people who caused the harm. So let's name what they actually were. Not complicated people who loved imperfectly, not wounded souls doing their best. Drains, deliberate or not, conscious or not, they were entities that had identified in you an extraordinary source of energy and organized their relationship with you around extracting it. They took your empathy and called it your personality, so you would keep producing it. They took your forgiveness and called it your strength, so you would keep offering it. They took your silence in the face of mistreatment and called it maturity, so you would keep performing it. They dressed consumption up as connection and handed it to you as love, wand, and the specific cruelty, the part that makes this particular kind of damage so precise, is that they targeted your gifts, not your weaknesses, your depth of feeling, your refusal to abandon people, your genuine belief that everyone deserves understanding. These are not flaws that got exploited. These are extraordinary capacities that got weaponized. And there is a meaningful difference between those two things. In the psychic's vision, these people were frozen, standing completely still in the space where the old version of you used to exist, reaching out for something their hands could no longer find, like grasping at smoke, like demanding an echo respond after the source has moved too far away to hear the call. They had built their entire emotional infrastructure around having permanent access to you, and now the access was gone, and they had no architecture for what to do next. Bornhutel, the psychic said, your absence registered in these people like a wound that refuses to close. And here is the critical distinction, not because they loved you in any real sense of that word, because you were a frequency they required to function. Your empathy was their fuel, your peace was their product. They had never been required to generate those things internally because you were always there to supply them externally. And when the supply ended, when you chose yourself completely and cut the cord without negotiation, it left them in genuine withdrawal. So they watch. They circle at a distance. They check for signals that the old version of you might re-emerge. They craft explanations for your transformation that protect them from having to face what it actually means. Because the actual explanation that you simply decided your own life mattered more than their comfort requires them to examine what they did with your generosity, and they are not built for that examination. Let them wrestle with the confusion of losing access to a source they never honored. That confusion is not your burden to relieve. It is the natural consequence of power that has finally stopped subsidizing its own diminishment, and it goes further than that. Because what the psychic saw next is the part that shifts this from a personal reckoning into something that operates on an entirely different scale. The vision moved, and the psychic said what came through next was something they had rarely witnessed with that degree of clarity. Your energy was not simply changed, it was rewriting the space around you, not your perception of that space, the actual field of influence surrounding your presence in the world. The narrative that other people had been running about who you were, manageable, available, predictable, safe, was cracking, not because you had done anything to challenge it, because a frequency that fundamental cannot shift as completely as yours did, without the old story becoming structurally unsustainable. Monda, the psychic, saw people who had dismissed you, finding themselves unable to stop thinking about you, not because you had reached out, not because you had made any effort to re-enter their awareness, because the version of you that they had built their dismissal around no longer existed, and the absence of that version created a space in their consciousness that their minds kept returning to, searching for something they could not name, unsettled by a change they could not explain. Nature does not tolerate a vacuum. When something that occupied significant space in a system disappears, the system reorganizes around the absence, and your departure from the energetic positions you used to hold, the accommodating one, the available one, the one who could be relied upon to shrink, left absences in multiple systems simultaneously. People who once looked through you now find the thought of you interrupting their focus without warning. People who once defined you by your usefulness are now experiencing something closer to unease because the category they placed you in no longer holds. You have become a frequency that surfaces in other people's consciousness without effort or intention on your part. You are not pursuing their attention. You have become the thing their attention cannot fully release. You are not asking to be remembered. You have made it structurally difficult to forget you. The psychic was precise about the mechanism. You did not turn up the volume on your signal. You removed the suppressor that had been dampening it for years. The raw frequency was always that powerful. The compression was always producing something that could not be contained indefinitely. What you are experiencing now, the magnetic pull, the way people respond to your presence differently, the sense that you occupy space in a way you never used to, that is not new power. That is original power, with nothing muffling it anymore. And the psychic said the vision was about to show them something they needed to sit with afterward, the part that extended beyond the personal, beyond the people who knew you, beyond the field of influence immediately surrounding your life, something that explains why a signal like yours reaches Japan, why the universe does not simply witness this kind of transformation, why it mobilizes around it. The psychic reached forward in the vision. This is the work, reading not just what is, but what is being constructed. They extended their awareness toward your trajectory, toward what this transformation is building into, toward what the future holds for a frequency as fundamentally altered as yours. And they encountered something that stopped them. Not emptiness, not a closed door, the edge of the map, the specific boundary where charted territory ends and completely uncharted ground begins. Your future does not exist inside any existing template. It does not fit the standard shapes of what success or healing or becoming typically look like. It is not on any trajectory that could have been predicted from where you started, because what you are becoming has not been assembled from the available materials before, not in this specific configuration, not with this particular combination of what you survived, what you refused to become because of it, and what ignited in the space your refusal created. The psychic said it was like trying to describe a color that does not yet have a name. Every reference they reached for was insufficient. Every comparison fell short, not because your future is vague, because it is too specific to what you are for any existing framework to fully contain it. And then the clearest image of the entire vision broke through. You, walking forward into a darkness that carried no threat. Not the darkness of loss or absence, the darkness of pure potential saturated with everything that has not yet been born, heavy with futures that have not yet taken shape, alive with the specific electricity of something enormous in the process of becoming real. And with every step forward you took, light appeared beneath your feet. Not ahead of you, where you could plan for it, not above you, where you could appeal to it. Beneath your feet, in real time, called into existence entirely by the fact of your forward motion, not reflected light, not borrowed light, not light that requires external permission to exist, Light that is generated by you, through movement, through the act of continuing to walk in the direction of your actual frequency. Did your arm? Before you walked, there was only dark ground. After each step, light. Which means you are not walking toward an illuminated destination. You are illuminating the path as you create it. Which means everyone who comes after you, every chosen one still inside the kind of compression you just broke free from, every soul still in the place you were before the ignition, they are going to have a lit path to follow. Not because you built it for them, not because you announced it, or taught it, or handed it over consciously, because you walked it, because you refused to stop, because you kept moving forward in your own frequency when everything around you was organized around the assumption that you would not. You are creating a blueprint inside the darkness, and people who cannot yet see you will find their way toward freedom by following a light source whose origin they may never be able to explain. Potemins the psychic had one more thing to show, the one that closes the answer to the question that has been building since the opening of this, the answer to why this happens, why a signal like yours reaches another continent, why the universe does not simply observe this kind of transformation, why it sends a witness, dotting another unin. You are in the gap. The gap is the territory between who you were and who you are fully becoming. The old frequency has released its hold. The old patterns no longer feel like home, but the new landscape is not completely legible yet. The new connections have not all arrived. The new version of your life that is being constructed around your new frequency is in progress, not complete. And this in-between territory is the most disorienting place a chosen one can occupy, because it offers the evidence of neither the old world nor the new one in any satisfying form. The universe is watching precisely here, not to evaluate you, to see what you do with discomfort that does not yet have a resolution, to see whether you hold the frequency you claimed in that silent, decisive moment, or whether you allow the weight of the gap to push you back toward the familiar, toward the old patterns, toward the old relationships, toward the smaller version of yourself that required less courage and generated less friction. Thus, because you understand something now that you could not have understood before the ignition. Every moment of discomfort in the gap is not evidence that you chose wrong. It is the price of admission for the life that is being built on the other side of it, and you have already paid far steeper prices for outcomes far less worthy of you. You are not waiting for your life to begin. You are in the middle of the most important construction project in your entire existence, and the discomfort you feel is not stagnation. It is the specific sensation of foundation being poured. It does not look like progress from inside it, but it is the thing everything else will stand on. The connections that match your new frequency are in motion toward you. Souls who have done their own work. People who come to you whole, who have no interest in consuming you because they have built their own interior resources. They cannot arrive until the frequency is stable, until you have demonstrated, not to anyone watching, but to the integrity of your own signal, that you will not compromise it to shorten the wait. Hold, not as an act of endurance, as an act of power. The chosen one, who has been through what you have been through and is still moving forward, is not waiting to become powerful. You already are. You are just learning to recognize it, without requiring external confirmation first. What you already are. You are just learning to recognize it, without requiring underneath everything. The one that has been running through every part of this since the opening. Not just why the psychic received a vision, but why the vision was about you, why this specific soul, why this specific transformation. Why Japan received your signal when millions of other people are suffering their way through difficult seasons without generating a fraction of that reach. Dunabishan, the mechanism requires three things to align. They almost never do. The first is genuine rarity. Not performed depth or aspired to significance. The actual thing carried in the frequency of a soul that is genuinely exceptional, even when it does not know it, even when the people around it cannot perceive it. even when years of compression have buried it so deep beneath layers of accommodation and self-erasure that the person themselves have nearly forgotten it is there. The signal has to be real before it can travel. Yours was always real. What changed was the volume of interference suppressing it. The second is the depth of the compression. This is the counterintuitive part. The suffering was not incidental to the transformation. It was proportional to it. The sustained pressure, the years of making yourself smaller, the accumulation of wounds that were never properly named. This is not a tragic backstory attached to an otherwise ordinary shift. It is the geological process that determined the quality of what emerged. A diamond made under shallow pressure is not a diamond. The depth of the compression is what produced the frequency that reached Japan. The third is the choice. This is the rarest of the three, and it is the one the universe specifically wanted witnessed. Most people who reach the compression point and the ignition point do not make the choice you made. They collapse into bitterness. They build an identity around what was done to them. They carry the wound forward as a justification for not becoming who they were capable of becoming. And that is a comprehensible response. It is understandable. But it does not produce a signal. Freundtund, you transmuted. You took the wound and distilled wisdom from it. You took the betrayal and built a boundary with its material. You took the isolation and used it to understand yourself at a level that connection never would have enabled. And that specific, deliberate, almost impossibly difficult act of transmutation is what the universe dispatched a witness for. The distance of Japan is not incidental. A stranger with no relationship to you, no history with your situation, no personal investment in your transformation, receiving your signal so powerfully that they were physically stopped by it. That is the most unimpeachable possible confirmation that what happened inside you was objectively real, not imagined, not inflated, real, significant, the kind of shift the cosmos marks because it knows what it is looking at. Your pain had architecture, your breakdown was a gateway, your silence was a broadcast, and it was received. Trying to be the version of yourself that did not disrupt, did not require, did not take up space in ways that inconvenienced anyone. And every attempt to suppress the storm was an attempt to suppress the signal. The very thing that makes you extraordinary, the force, the depth, the capacity, the frequency, is the thing you were trained to apologize for. The storm is the gift. The storm is the signal. The storm is what crosses oceans and registers on instruments and makes a stranger on the other side of this earth stop and demand that the universe explain what just arrived. What you have now is not a new version of the person you were before the compression. The compression produced something new entirely. You are the black fire, the closed loop, the gravitational center of your own world. The chosen one, who chose themselves at the exact moment when every surrounding force was betting they would not. The signal that reached Japan, not in spite of what you survived, but because of what you chose to become on the other side of surviving it. You old constructs will not fit. The old dynamics cannot hold what you are now. The old version of yourself is gone in the most final, most permanent, most liberating sense of the word gone. Shuto, you do not go back. Not to who you were, not to who they needed you to be, not to the shape that was convenient for people who were never invested in your actual becoming. You walk forward, into the dark that is saturated with everything not yet born, into the uncharted ground past the edge of every existing map, and the light appears beneath your feet with every step, not because someone placed it there, not because you earned it through sufficient suffering, but because you are finally moving in your actual direction, at your actual frequency, with nothing suppressing the signal. The light was never ahead of you, it was never above you. It is in your movement. It has always been in your movement. Every step you have ever taken in the direction of your true self, no matter how uncertain, no matter how unseen, was already illuminating ground that someone behind you would one day walk. Now you know what that means. Now you know what you are. Now you know that the universe does not send witnesses from the other side of the planet for ordinary events. Noftri Pittis, you are not ordinary. You never were. You were just temporarily in an ecosystem that needed you to believe you were. That ecosystem is behind you now. Kotauf. Walk forward, chosen one. The storm does not explain itself to the weather it makes, and neither do you.